I always imagined I'd sense it happening. That supposed intuition women possess about impending disaster. However, there I was, cutting up some fancy tomatoes for his favorite pasta sauce when the message that would demolish my life appeared on my phone. From Nathan. Ella, I can't continue this relationship. I'm leaving. Megan and I have been seeing each other for a while now. I've moved some money to get established. I apologize. The knife fell from my hand, hitting the marble counter with a loud clang. Megan, my sister, my damn sister. I scrutinized those words until my vision swam, and my kitchen, which had always been a safe space, suddenly felt unfamiliar. The pasta water overflowed, making a hissing sound as it touched the hot burner. It's strange how everything else keeps going when your own world comes to a standstill. I logged into our shared bank account. $18,000 were gone. Poof, vanished. The awful thing about being betrayed is how it changes your recollections. All those late evenings working late. The inexplicable hotel receipts. The way he took phone calls elsewhere in the house. The unusually prolonged hugs between them at Christmas time. Every single questionable moment I had explained away suddenly made perfect sense, as if a lock had finally clicked open. I didn't shed any tears. Not at that moment. Instead, I deliberately turned off the stove, poured myself a glass of the Cabernet we were saving for our anniversary, and sat down to fully assess just how thoroughly I had been manipulated. Game on, I muttered to my deserted kitchen, my voice holding firm even though my hands were shaking. Game fucking on. The very first clue I came across was completely obvious. It was the receipt from the Lakewood Grand Hotel, tucked away in his sock drawer, as if I wouldn't even think to look. 3 nights, a luxury suite, complete with champagne service. All this while I believed he was attending a financial planning seminar in Denver. My thorough investigation uncovered even more revelations. A secret folder of messages on his computer, outlining not just their affair but the meticulously planned steps they took to abandon me. These messages went back 11 months. They were discussing things during brunch. They were even looking at apartments together. My sister inquired if the antique roll-top desk in our spare bedroom, the one I had painstakingly refurbished after finding it at an estate sale, could potentially go with them. The Nathan I read about in those messages was almost unrecognizable, mean, condescending, and cold-hearted. He wrote, "She'll be upset for a time, but she'll be all right." Then he added, "Ella's always the resilient one, plus she has the boutique to keep her occupied." My boutique, the clothing store that I had created from scratch while supporting his career. The business that had finally started making a good profit this year. It was the dream he'd called my expensive hobby for the first 3 years. But the financial documents really told the whole story. There were small withdrawals here and there. Investment accounts were slowly being depleted. It was a pattern of financial manipulation, so subtle I probably wouldn't have caught it had he not gotten greedy with that last $18,000 withdrawal. I was perched on our bedroom floor, legs crossed, with spreadsheets and screenshots scattered around, resembling a bomb blast, and finally the tears started flowing. They weren't sad tears, though. They were tears of anger. These tears burned my cheeks and made my vision swim, yet somehow they made me feel stronger inside. I wasn't just hurt, I'd been deliberately targeted, with careful planning, by the 2 people who were supposed to be my biggest protectors. That evening, I made a couple of phone calls. First, I called Patricia Winters, the tenacious lawyer who'd assisted my friend Sophia through her terrible divorce. Then, I called my mentor, Diana Ellis, the woman who supported my small business when no financial institution would take a risk on me. "I need to gather my troops," I told Diana, my voice sounding empty even to me. "I'll be there in half an hour," she responded instantly. "And Ella, bring everything, every single bill, every screenshot, every bank record. We're not just going to get through this. We're going to take them down." Patricia's office had the scent of expensive leather and triumph. She listened without saying a word as I recounted the whole awful story, occasionally jotting down notes on a yellow legal pad. Her eyes, behind her frameless glasses, were assessing but also understanding. "The good news," she said once I was done, "is that he made a huge mistake with that withdrawal. Judges don't react well to people taking all the money out of accounts before a divorce, and he hasn't even filed yet, right?" "I don't think so. The message just said he was going." "This is going to be great. Right now, we're freezing absolutely everything. The shared bank accounts, our investments, all the real estate, everything. I know he believed you wouldn't cope with this. We're going to prove him completely wrong. Diana, looking stunning in her go-to black turtleneck, had been quietly going over the financial records I'd given her. Then she lifted her gaze, her expression serious. He's been plotting this for a minimum of a year and a half, she mentioned. The withdrawals began small but then grew over time. It's actually a textbook embezzlement scheme. A year and a half, I felt like a ghost. That's when I opened the second store. When you were too occupied to see, Patricia affirmed. It's a common tactic for unfaithful partners. They wait for their spouse to be absorbed by a significant venture, and then they start their affair. Diana put her hand on top of mine. This isn't your fault, Ella. You placed your faith in people who should have been reliable. However, we're going to safeguard what's yours from now on. Patricia explained the plan. Instant court orders to freeze all the accounts, documenting everything that was gone, immediately filing legal papers to prove he stole from me while we were still married, and bringing in a forensic accountant to track every cent that went missing. What about the affair? I wondered. Does that even have any legal weight? To be honest, it's not as crucial as the financial wrongdoing. Colorado is a no-fault state. However, she touched the bank records, this is theft, plain and simple, and we can use it to our advantage. When I walked out of Patricia's office, I knew my finances were safeguarded. I had a forensic accountant working for me, and they were already drawing up the initial paperwork. Diana drove me back to my house, urging me not to be by myself that evening. Shut off your phone, she told me. He'll figure out what's up once his credit cards quit working. Let him stew with your sister. You need to get some sleep. I took her advice, but I couldn't sleep. I ended up in the home office at 3 a.m., establishing the most comprehensive documentation system I'd ever created. Every text, every bill, every recollection of fishy behavior, all categorized chronologically, put into files, and saved securely to the cloud. This was not only about the divorce. It was about staying alive. It was about fairness. It was about making sure that when it was all over, I'd still be standing, and they would comprehend precisely what they had done. I hadn't intended to speak to him so quickly. Patricia had cautioned me against it. Surprise element, she'd said. Let the legal documents be his first inkling that you're not backing down. But then I spotted them, together, wandering around the farmer's market at Westside Plaza like they hadn't blown up someone's world just 3 days prior. His hand was casually on my sister's lower back, a touch he'd given me many times. She had on a sundress I'd bought for her birthday. Something inside of me shattered. I went towards them, projecting a composure that was far from my inner state, navigating the bustling weekend shoppers with purpose. Nathan spotted me immediately, his eyes growing wide, like a startled animal caught in a car's headlights, which in a different context might have been funny. Ella, he stammered, his voice cracking. We have to speak, but not here. Why not right here? My voice was loud, attracting attention. You had no problem swindling $18,000 from my bank accounts. You had no qualms about sleeping with my sister for roughly 12 months. So why are you suddenly uncomfortable speaking in a public place? Megan's face lost color, her freckles becoming more prominent against her pale skin. Ella, I beg you. Beg me what, Megan? Beg me to stay silent about how you aided and abetted your brother-in-law's theft while you were in bed with him. Beg me to forget those breakfast planning get-togethers where you both dissected my life like a pair of vultures. By this time, everyone was looking at us, and I saw multiple cell phones being used. I didn't give a damn. Nathan moved closer to me, using that condescending tone he always did when he believed I was being difficult. You're causing a disturbance. This behavior isn't typical of you. You really don't have a clue what I am anymore. I smiled then, a chilly, unnerving smile that didn't feel like my own. But you're about to find out. Have you checked your bank accounts recently, Nathan? Did you notice something restricted? The look of terror in his eyes justified any disapproval I might get from Patricia for this unplanned confrontation. What did you do? He whispered. I defended what was rightfully mine. I really should have acted the instant you arrived home smelling of my sister's fragrance. I heard a woman nearby take a sharp, audible breath. He spoke, you can't just freeze our accounts, but his tone betrayed his doubt. Oh, but I can. And by the way, the forensic accountant sends their regards. Every single cent you swiped. We're tracing it. Those small withdrawals you figured I wouldn't catch, they're all recorded. That $18,000, it's just the delicious topping on your criminal charges. Megan reached for his arm. Nathan, let's leave. However, I wasn't done. I advanced toward him, close enough to see the patch of stubble he'd missed shaving, close enough to catch the scent of the cologne I had given him for Christmas. You assumed I'd fall apart. You imagined I'd be so crushed by your leaving that I wouldn't retaliate. That's the issue with being betrayed, Nathan. It does more than just damage hearts, it makes fighters. I started to walk away, then stopped, turning to look at my sister. Oh, Megan, that desk you've been wanting, I'm giving it to the women's shelter, it just feels right somehow. As I walked away, keeping my head held high, I heard the unmistakable noises of a fight starting behind me. The start of the end of their solidarity, and somehow I couldn't help but smile. I hadn't anticipated finding Project Exodus. I always thought Nathan was overly confident, especially when he used our shared cloud storage for everything, seemingly without a thought that I might look through it. It was about 3 weeks after that whole mess at the market, and I was gathering some files for Patricia when I found a folder I'd never encountered before. Within that folder was the entire plan to bring me down. There were detailed notes about my weaknesses, financial forecasts showing how they would take the most money possible. There was a schedule for when they would reveal their relationship to the world, all designed to cause the least amount of trouble. Plus, they had lists of our friends, categorized based on how likely they were to stay loyal to them. The most frightening part was a document labeled Backup Plans that described how they deal with my reactions. Plan A, Ella completely falls apart. Plan B, Ella makes a public scene. Plan C, Ella seeks retribution. For that third scenario, Nathan had written, not likely. Ella usually runs from arguments and has always cared about how she looks. But if she tries to take legal action, we should point out her work habits, how emotionally distant she is, and her past therapy for anxiety to make her seem unstable. He had intended to use my anxiety as a weapon, the anxiety that I developed after my dad died, the anxiety I had been vulnerable enough to share with him so I could get better. I made copies of everything, 3 in total. I kept one for myself, gave one to Patricia, and sealed the last one in a waterproof case that I left at Diana's place. After that, I started to put my plan into action. I think Nathan genuinely misjudged who I am at my core. Sure, privacy was important to me, and it's true that I put in a ton of effort. But he seemed to see my restraint as a sign of vulnerability and confused my self-respect with being passive. He'd overlooked the fact that I created a company from the ground up, that I navigated my dad's passing and my mom's difficult decline, and that I managed to pay for college by working 2 jobs at the same time. He'd forgotten, or maybe he really didn't grasp, the kind of person he was up against. With Patricia helping me, I put my plan into action step by step. I started with financial safeguards, not just freezing the accounts but running complete audits. Every single asset was accounted for, right down to the last utensil. The forensic accountant Patricia brought in discovered another $42,000 Nathan had secretly taken over a year and a half, and now, that cash plus interest would need to be returned. After that, I gathered all the proof, those incriminating messages, the documents from Project Exodus, and statements from the staff at the Lakewood Grand Hotel who had got to know my husband and sister since they stayed there so often. I even retrieved deleted texts from a phone backup that Nathan didn't know existed. Finally, I started releasing information strategically, not putting it all over social media, which would have just supported his emotionally unstable story, but by sharing facts carefully with important people in our lives. His supervisor, our financial advisor, the chairperson of the charity board we both volunteered on. I felt it was important for you to know about some troubling things I'd discovered, and I would explain this in a composed manner, backing it up with specific proof. I was dealing with this discreetly, but I believed you should be in the loop, considering your connection with Nathan. Patricia described it as a deliberate effort to destroy his good name. I too was stunned by what happened next. Folks I'd assumed would stand by Nathan, especially the friends he'd had in college, reached out, offering their backing. My business started doing better, and clients specifically told me they wanted to offer their assistance. James, who worked with Nathan, shared some paperwork showing that Nathan tried to claim expenses for those hotel stays as meetings with clients. In the meantime, Nathan and Megan were struggling quite a bit. The frozen bank accounts had really hurt them. Their prearranged plan to get out of our lives had depended on having access to our combined finances, while I was left to deal with things. With that financial security gone, they were forced to move into a cheap apartment building that was famous for its poor construction and constant problems with mold. Nathan tried to limit the harm, sending a generic email to our mutual friends, saying I was experiencing some issues and was making up false claims. It completely backfired when everyone, who already knew what was really going on, responded by distancing themselves from him. Megan tried to contact me directly, leaving a voicemail expressing the desire to mend our family that seemed more like panic than regret. Without listening to it again, I sent it to Patricia. It seemed like everyone on social media was subtly hinting at what was going on with us. Nathan's company secretly deleted his profile from the leadership team section of their website. The charity's board sent an official letter stating they accepted his resignation. Everything was collapsing around us. Everything fell apart quicker than anyone expected it to. In a moment of desperation, Nathan, feeling trapped, tried to save face. He decided to organize a meeting at Hillcrest Community Center, the place where, ironically, we had celebrated our engagement 6 years before. Diana's son was employed there and gave us the inside scoop. "He's invited almost everyone you know," she said. "He claims it's to clear the air concerning Ella's accusations." Patricia strongly advised me not to go. "Let him ruin himself. We have him legally. Being there isn't worth the hassle." But I knew I needed to be there. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The showdown that would end not just our marriage, but also his perceived control over me. "I'm going," I told Diana, "and I'll be bringing the proof, literally." I got there 20 minutes after the meeting was supposed to start. I wore a white suit that I'd designed for my boutique's professional line. My hair was up. My makeup was light. I wasn't wearing my wedding ring. I clutched a thin leather portfolio with the most important pieces of evidence I'd gathered. The main hall in the community center became quiet when I walked inside. Roughly 40 people had gathered, which was probably a smaller turnout than Nathan had envisioned, although it was still a decent size. He was standing at the front near a makeshift podium, in the middle of what seemed like a very emotional speech. Megan was in the front row, and her face changed from looking encouraging to looking absolutely terrified as she noticed me. Nathan stopped talking. "Ella, this is a private meeting." "It's strange, but our marriage was too. Still, you didn't hesitate to involve my sister." My voice easily filled the room. Giving business presentations for years had taught me how to project my voice without yelling. I strolled slowly toward the middle of the room. "Please, go on. I'm interested in hearing how you're spinning our story." He glanced around nervously. "I was just saying how worried I am about your safety and how these claims are completely backed up," I finished. "With the dates, bills, and statements from people who saw it happen." I opened my portfolio. "Do you want me to share them right now, or would you rather finish your version first?" A low buzz of chatter went through the crowd. Nathan's face turned red. "You're distorting everything," he stated, but his voice didn't sound very confident. "All right, let's take a look," I thought. I turned my head to face everyone. Nathan requested this meeting to settle things, so that's precisely what we're going to do. Pure facts. On the 15th of March, Nathan took $18,000 from our shared accounts before he sent me a text saying he was leaving me for my sister, whom he had been secretly involved with for almost a year. I picked up the bank statement and held it up. "This is fact." 18 months, Megan whispered, her voice barely audible. The room became completely silent. Nathan immediately turned to her. "Megan, please don't." "It wasn't just a year, it was a year and a half." She looked straight at me, tears flowing freely. "I'm sorry, I am so very sorry." And just like that, the story Nathan had created fell apart. He attempted to take charge again, saying I was manipulative, that I was always aloof, that I forced him to find happiness somewhere else. But with every frantic statement, he became less believable. I stayed composed, offering proof with each point. The money withdrawal, the Project Exodus papers, the plot to use my anxiety against me. People gradually started leaving, not in a rage, but by quietly walking away with eyes cast down, giving soft excuses. Each one leaving was a vote against Nathan, and he was losing badly. Eventually, when only a few astonished people were left, Nathan lost it completely. "Do you believe you've actually won?" he yelled, completely abandoning any attempt to seem calm. You are nothing without me. Who do you think made your little boutique a reality? Who gave you standing in this town? My genuine smile widened then. I did indeed. While you were scheming to ruin me, I was busy constructing my own company. I built a whole life that you tried to obliterate but utterly failed to. Now everyone knows exactly the kind of person you are. I shut the portfolio I was carrying. The court date is scheduled for next Thursday. Patricia will be delivering your final legal documents tomorrow. And just so you know, the forensic accountant located the additional accounts where you stashed all the assets. The judge already knows about it. I started to walk away, but then stopped. Also, Nathan, a quick note, I'm keeping the house. You should probably begin searching for a new apartment. I've heard the mold problem in your place is quite severe. I walked away with my head held up, not once looking back to see what was left of the man I had built my life with. 6 months later, I found myself standing in my newly renovated kitchen. The old marble countertops were now replaced with warmer butcher block. The cold, stark white cabinets had been swapped for a deep navy blue. Everything that reminded me of the life I had with Nathan had been methodically removed. The legal process had been very quick and decisive. Patricia had been correct. Judges don't look favorably on spouses who steal money and hide assets. Nathan was ordered to pay back everything he took, plus the legal expenses. The house, the bulk of our investments, and complete control of my shop were all awarded to me. I'd heard Nathan and Megan had relocated to Arizona. His financial planning profession had crashed and burned after the news about him stealing from our joint accounts got around. My sister had made an attempt to contact me again, sending me a handwritten letter that I tossed into the fire without ever opening it. Certain relationships are just beyond repair. My shop, though, hadn't just held its own but was actually doing really well. I'd renamed it Phoenix Rising. It may have been a little obvious, but the meaning behind it was something my clients connected with. We had opened a third location, and I had also created a small clothing line that was specifically made for women who were starting over after some big life changes. Once a month, I would lead a support group over at the women's shelter, where I'd also given away Nathan's antique desk, which he loved. We called it Rebuilding After Betrayal. I would share my personal story honestly, focusing not on how much it hurt, but on the strength I'd found again. The wall in my home office, which used to be covered with pictures from my wedding, now showed off milestones that were framed. The official court order that got my stolen money back to me. The key to my third store, articles in the news about my clothing line. Thank you notes from some of the women I'd helped out. My phone vibrated as a text from Diana came through, still planning on dinner. I'm also bringing that real estate agent to talk about the fourth location. I grinned and agreed. Then I launched the voice memo application on my device. I'd begun capturing audio notes for myself during the most difficult periods of the separation, brief motivational speeches and insights that had helped me keep things in check. Currently, I continued this habit as a way to monitor my personal development. 6 months after Nathan, I announced clearly into my phone. And right now I grasped something significant. This retaliation wasn't merely about making them suffer consequences. It was about demonstrating to myself that I couldn't be broken, that I wasn't as fragile as they believed, that infidelity doesn't dictate who you are, how you react to it is what truly matters. I took a break, glancing around the kitchen, which was now completely mine. To anyone who might be hearing these recordings down the line, they can steal your confidence, your past, even your kin. But they can never seize your strength unless you give it up, and I never will again. I finished the recording and put my phone away. Outside, the sun was going down, giving my garden a radiant glow. I had social engagements to attend, a company to develop, and a life that was, at long last, fully mine. It turns out, leading a fulfilling life isn't just the best retribution. It is the only form of it that is actually worthwhile.